Hello and welcome to my review of the new Tau Codex, which I got from the Tau Army set, which is available for pre-order from today. Now, I don't know whether the Tau Codex will also be available for pre-order from today separately, or whether you have to get this Tau Army set box to get the Tau Codex. They've done this before, where they've released boxes with the codex in, and then the codex comes out a couple of weeks later and it sucks, but this is what someone at Games Workshop have decided to do. Again, don't know whether they're doing it this time round. I think I'll find out on Saturday along with you guys. Anyway, Tau Codex, let's get to it. So, Tau Codex, I'm mainly going to look at the detachments here, not all the individual bits through it, for a couple of reasons. One, it would take a very long time. Two, Games Workshop release and leak half of the stuff anyway on the Warhammer community website, and also All Specs Tactics YouTube channel does a really good job of breaking down all the bits and pieces that come out in advance. So we're mainly going to focus on detachments, of which there are 4. We'll talk about the new crew units as well. There's 9 different crew units in this box, plus Vespids. The changes to crisis suits are bad, shall we say. And yeah, that's where we'll start. I mean, they've decided to break crisis suits into Sunforge, Fire Knife, Stars, 3 different types of crisis suits, depending on the loadout in which you bring. You can only bring them in units of 3, which is a curious decision. Why can't you bring them in units of 6? But you can only bring them in units of 3, and I guess breaking them into 3 separate units allows you to bring more crisis suits. When it was just 1 index card, you could only bring 3 of them. So now you can bring more than 3 of them, 3 of each of them. There's no cyclic iron blasters available for any of these suits. Sunforge is the melter variant. It's interesting that it can re-roll wounds and re-roll damage point blank, and it's also got a free invulnerable save baked into it. It is the only crisis suit that has the invulnerable save baked into it. Crisis suits will no longer have access to invulnerable saves unless you bring the Sunforge stuff. But the re-roll wound and re-roll damage is good because, strangely enough, Tau do struggle with anti-tank. Well, they've only got a couple of reliable anti-tank guns, being rail guns, heavy rail guns, things like that. And in the past, the melter, the fusion blasters, they would pick up the anti-tank weight that was missing from the Tau Codex, or sparse in the Tau Codex. Tau players will know what I'm talking about. But now, with the toughness changes to everything, melter, plasma, and fusion doesn't do what it did before. Beforehand, those sorts of guns were pretty reliable at taking down big things if you got within a certain range. But these days, because toughness has gone up everywhere, fusion not as reliable as it was in taking down big things. So the change to the Sunforge, or the new introduction of the Sunforge, allowing them to re-roll wounds and re-roll damage, is going to help Tau in the anti-tank, because apart from that, your only real reliable ranged anti-tank will be the railguns, and of course the massive big Titanic unit as well. But Tau, with all the guns and things, you'd expect them to take down big things with ease, but not so much really. Not in practice, not without lots of shenanigans, moving around all over the place, or whittling stuff down and whittling stuff down. Strangely enough, AdMech have a similar thing. You'd think AdMech, the people who build the tanks, will be very good at taking down the tanks. They've only got a couple of things in their codex which is pretty reliable anti-tank. Otherwise, you're going to rely on damage through weapons, whittling things down. So yeah, we've got the Sunforge. Then there's the Fire Knife, which is the missile or plasma variant. Plasma range has gone all the way down to 18 inches, which is another curious decision. It used to be 24, it went up to 30 or plus 30 in the last edition. Now it's gone all the way down to 18, which means you're going to need to get them close and personal in order to do that damage. And without access to an invulnerable save, and Tau can't fight in close combat. That's curious. The Star Scythe variant of the crisis suit is the burst gun or the flamer gun. That one is allowed to fall back and shoot still. Not sure we're going to see many of them on the tabletop, but you'll notice there's no cyclic iron blasters here. The only way you can bring one is on commanders, and There is restrictions on the types of drones you can bring. There's restrictions on the types of weapon loadouts you can bring. Let's just say crisis suits, which have been a mainstay and also an iconic unit in the Tau Codex for so long, have been changed quite radically from where they've been before. This is what Tau players have now. I'm sure there's some geniuses out there who will be able to make them sing, and you'll be able to spam them a bit more. And the Retaliation Strike detachment, which we'll talk about later, is specifically aimed with battle suits in mind. It's a detachment that helps only battle suits, so maybe there's some beans in there once Tau players get their hands on this codex and start figuring it out. Talking about changes and new stuff, obviously we have all the new Kroot in here. I'm not sure why you would bring Kroot. Toughness 3 with a 6-up save for all the standard Kroot means if you just blow in their general direction, they're going to fall over. I think you'll bring Kroot if you bring the Kroot detachment, and that gives them a bit more beef because the Kroot detachment does give them invulnerable saves. But it seems to me that the points cost for the Kroot has got the Kroot detachment in mind. Basically, they feel overcosted points-wise unless you actually bring the Kroot detachment. There is an interesting unit in here that will have some teeth, which is the Krootox Rampagers. They're going to be okay in close combat, but they're around the same cost as Orc Squig Boys. They've got more wounds than Orc Squig Boys, but they're not as tough, and they don't have a feel no pain, and they're not as punchy in close combat. Essentially, the feel no pain is better than having extra wounds, because that's a save you're always going to get on top of your additional save or cover saves or things like that. So I feel like even though the Orc Squig Boys have less wounds, they are more resilient, and they're also a bit more punchy in close combat. But Kroot Rampagers might find a niche somewhere in a Tau list because Tau can't punch, and this is about the only thing that is pretty punchy in the book. Obviously Kroot can punch a little bit, but they're Kroot. Kroot Rampagers will be able to punch a bit more. I'm not saying they're much worse than Orc Squig Hog Boys, just a little bit less attacks, a little bit less resilience. But the fact that they're around the same points cost as those units shows that I feel like they've baked in the detachment benefits for Kroot on top of the points that you normally take just to bring Kroot. So bringing Kroot as standalone units inside a normal Tau thing, they're definitely going to feel overcosted. Right, let's talk about the Tau army rule, which is unchanged from the index, which I find quite curious because they managed to change the Space Marine army rule for Oath of Moment before the Codex release. They could clearly do that before, and they've chosen not to change the army rule for the Tau release. And this is one of the few army rules that actively can hurt you. So, for example, if a guided unit doesn't shoot at the unit that it's guided towards, then your army rule actually has a negative impact on you because you've got minuses to ballistic skill if you choose to not shoot at your guided unit. Most army rules only have benefits. This one can have a benefit and a negative. It's a bit of a word salad army rule, so they've introduced a nice new diagram to explain exactly how it works, but I would have liked to have seen a change. Also, it doesn't make much narrative sense to me. It doesn't even make much real world sense. Like if I'm in an M1's Abrams tank and HQ is guiding me towards a particular target, but no, I'm in a firefight over here on the left and choosing not to be guided to that particular target and instead shoot the target over on the left, the firing capabilities of my tank are suddenly not degraded because I'm choosing not to listen to what HQ is telling me to do. I've still got my optics, I've still got all my infrareds and all my things and stuff. But Tau clearly have a problem when they're not doing what they're told, when they're not following the greater good. So the army rule is unchanged. Now let's talk about Kaon detachment. The Kaon detachment is the one that came out with the index. It's the same as it was before. A couple of the stratagems have gone. Stim injectors have gone. That's in another detachment now. You can't get that if you use the Kaon detachment. Strike and fade, which was the move, shoot, move stratagem, that's gone. In the same, you've got point blank ambush, coordinate to engage, photon grenades, combat embarkation. They're all the same, But the two new stratagems, or the two change stratagems, instead of stim injections and strike and fade, is a tempting trap, which you get +1 to wound in range of a selected objective marker, but you can't use it in turns 1 and 2. And then there's War of Mirrors, which only applies to stealth, Ghost Kill, or Shadow Sun, and you can put them back into strategic reserves at the end of opponent's fight phase. Losing move, shoot, move in K-On is tough, and losing stim injectors in K-On is tough, but that's where we are. Now, before I talked about how Tau don't have the broadest range of anti-tank options, they have anti-tank options, but not the broadest range of anti-tank options. Montcar goes some way to address that, because your army gets lethal hits in the first, second, and third battle round, so long as you're shooting. You could also get assault weapons as well if you're guided, so there's some combinations there which you'll have to think about while you're moving stuff around before you choose to spot something and guide something in the following shooting phase after your movement phase. But lethal hits, so 6 to hit, auto wound, goes some way to help mitigate against ranged shooting damage from Tau, particularly when it's all about shooting. Tau is all about the shooting. And there's also a nice enhancement in here called Coordinated Exploitation, which is when a player is leading a unit, each time that unit is an observer unit, until the end of the phase, ranged weapons equipped by models in the guided unit have sustained hits 1 while targeting their spotted unit. So suddenly you've got sustained hits and lethal hits with this Coordinated Exploitation enhancement. That's the go-to one in the Montcar section, I feel. As for stratagems, pinpoint counter-offensive is probably going to be used a lot. So once a Tau Empire unit has been destroyed, not a Kroot unit, you can stick a hex on that. Until the end of the battle, each time a Tau unit, not a Kroot unit, from your army makes an attack that targets the enemy that destroyed your unit, you can re-roll the hit rolls. And that's your entire army. So once an enemy unit has killed one of your things, your entire army from 1 CP can re-roll their hits against that unit. I can see Montcar players pulling this one out once, twice, 3 times during a battle to give them basically oath of moment against any enemy unit that kills any one of your enemy units, as long as it's not Kroot. Aggressive mobility is quite nice as well. Don't roll for your advance roll, just move a flat 6 inches. Movement wins your games. Focus fire is quite nice as well. Select an enemy unit and 2 of your units. Both of your Tau units have to shoot only at that enemy unit, but you get +1 AP. Pulse Onslaught is quite expensive, but movement wins your games. Basically, you pick an enemy unit that you just shot at, that the Tau just shot at, so long as it's not a monster, and that enemy unit is shaken, and it subtracts 2 to its move, 2 to its advance, 2 and to its charge rolls, 2 to its charge rolls as well. Slows down enemy units for 2 CP, so movement wins your games. And also, you really don't want punchy enemy units assaulting your Tau lines. Slowing down their movement, slowing down their advance, slowing down their charge will keep some of your guns alive for longer. And counter-fire defense systems will see some use as well. For 2 CP, it's basically the old disgustingly resilient. When you're getting shot at, each time an attack is allocated to your unit, -1 damage characteristics of that attack. The Death Guard have disgustingly resilient. They have this for 2 CP in close combat. The Tau have this for 2 CP against shooting. So 2 CP feels a bit pricey, but you might spend it. Having said that, being a Death Guard player, I've never spent the 2 CP on disgustingly resilient for my Death Guard in close combat, probably because the strat is a bit too expensive to employ. But Montcar is definitely an aggressive detachment which will help your shooting. Having lethal hits for the first 3 battle rounds is nice. Giving sustained hits to a unit at the same time is nice. Adding +1 AP when your 2 units are shooting at 1 unit, that's nice. We're going to see that a lot. And pinpoint counter-offensive when a unit dies. When a Tau unit dies, your whole army getting oath of moment against the unit that killed it, re-rolling all hits against it, minus Kroot stuff, that's nice as well. There's some nice aggressive stratagems in here. Detachment number 3 of 4, we have the Retaliation Cadre, which is designed with battlesuits in mind. Each time a Tau Empire battlesuit model from your army makes a ranged attack that targets a unit within 12, increase the strength of that by 1, and if the attack targets a unit within 6, improve the AP by 1 as well. So you're going to need to get close. If your suits are more than 12 inches away, your detachment rule will not help you. If your suits are within 6 inches, then your detachment rule will really help you. Getting close with the battle suits, if you get close to anything punchy, you're a Tau battle suit, you're gonna die. So you're gonna want to use this to get close to stuff that isn't punchy, isn't a dreadnought, isn't a mass world eater assault. You're probably not going to use retaliation cadre at all against a mass world eater assault, for example, and you're going to need to be very picky about where you're landing in to make this one sing, but improving the strength and AP by something by 6. So, for example, those melter suits, fusion suits that can drop in, Sunforge crisis suits that have a 4-up invulnerable save, that also re-roll wounds and re-roll damage. Well, you could drop one of those in. Well, if you manage to get them within 6 inches, having an extra strength, having an extra AP, and re-rolling wounds and re-rolling damage means you could do some real pretty hard anti-tank stuff with them. And there is a 2CP stratagem called the Shortened Blade, where you can drop 1 Tau Empire battlesuit unit from Deep Strike just more than 3 inches away, rather than more than 9 inches away. So you could drop them in, get all the benefits from Bonded Heroes, detachment rules from the retaliation cadre, and you're within melter range, and you're re-rolling wounds, and you're re-rolling damage. Anyone thinking that 3 minimum crisis suits with fusion is going to be standard in the new Tau book? I feel like that's going to be a thing. I think we're going to see Sunforge, Melter, Fusion, Tau, Crisis suits, 3 of them minimum, popping up in most Tau lists. I say that, most Tau lists that bring the retaliation cadre detachment, because why wouldn't you? The synergy there it's just on point. There's a really nice enhancement as well called the Star Flare Ignition System. Battlesuit models only at the end of your opponent's turn. If the bearer is not within engagement range of 1 or more enemy units, you can remove it, place it in strategic reserves. So it's going to be deep striking in again in your turn. That's quite a nice one. Movement wins your games, picking up units, redeploying, good stuff. The stim injection stratagem from K-On has moved from K-On to here. This is where you find stim injectors, and the move shoot move stratagem from K-On has moved here, but it's better. It's called the Torque Star Gambit, and in your shooting phase, a Tau battlesuit unit from your army that can fly. If it's not within an engagement range of 1 or more enemy units, it can make a normal move. It can't charge, but it's better because you can move further. Move, shoot, move with your stuff. But with those exceptions, it's difficult to find much to shout about in this detachment rule. The fact that you have to get within 12 to make your detachment rule work at all kind of sucks for Tau players, because Tau players would rather be 120 inches away from their entire enemy rather than within 12 inches of their entire enemy. They'd rather be on the closest moon shooting them from the other side of the galaxy than within 12 inches, let alone within 6 inches. And as soon you want to get close to make this one sing, and you don't want to be close because you're Tau. So let's move on quickly and talk about the Crew Hunting Pack, which has 2 distinct rules. Hunter Instincts: when a Crew model from your army makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll. If the target of that attack is below starting strength, add 1 to the wound roll as well if the target of that attack is below half strength. So nice. And then Skirmish Fighters: Crew in your army have a 6-up invulnerable save against melee and a 5-up invulnerable save against ranged attacks. And this is where I think I was talking about earlier about the points for the Crew. Seem to have this in mind, because most of the Crew units, most of the foot Crew units are toughness 3 with a 6-up save, so they're going to blow away if the breeze picks up, and giving them a 5-up invulnerable save to shooting seems to be baked into their points cost in this Tau book. Now, I could be wrong. I'm wrong most of the time, but once the Tau hit the tabletop, we could see Crew everywhere dominating GTs and LVTs and LVOs and SI. They could be everywhere, but we'll see. I don't think so. I think the idea with the Kroot is you could get lots of cheap infantry down the table and start move blocking and have some area of board control here or there to deny deep strike, to deny your opponent to move here or wherever. That would work so long as 10 Kroot didn't cost 80 points. Sorry, 85 points, or 170 points if you bring a unit of 20, because they can come in units of 20. But even 170 points for a unit of 20 of toughness 3 with a 6-up save is nothing. You need to bring the Kroot hunting pack to give them an invulnerable save. You probably are bringing a unit of 20 if you're bringing the Kroot hunting pack, because there's a strat in here where you can just bring them back again. It's called Join the Hunt. It's 2 CP. Just recycle a unit of Kroot. Nice. But 2 CP and their Kroot. 1 CP, for example, Guerrilla Warriors, allows Kroot to fall back and shoot and charge. So that sounds fantastic. 1 CP to allow any unit to fall back, shoot and charge is a really good thing. But Kroot falling back, shooting and charging, well, they're still Kroot. Hidden Hunters is the one you're probably popping most of the time. Your opponent's shooting phase just after they select a target. 1 Kroot unit from your army can't be shot at if it's more than 12 inches away. Staying hidden in the backfield or on the flanks on an objective. This is a strong one for Kroot. Enhancement wise, there's 2 that you could consider bringing, or 2 that are quite strong. Kroot Hawk Flock is an area denial ability. You can't be set up within 12 inches horizontally of the bearer if you're coming in from reinforcements. That area denial bubble, it's a 24-inch area denial bubble from the bearer is strong. I like that one. And Nomadic Hunter, which you put on a Kroot Trail Shaper. While the bearer is leading a unit, you can add 3 inches to their move characteristics of models in that unit. Again, movement wins you games, and having an enhancement where stuff just can move 50% faster than it could before, that's a good one as well. Right, a couple of incidental things, because I know people will ask. Drones are unchanged, except for missile drones. Missile drones have lost an AP, so instead of -2, they're now AP -1 when they shoot. Why? Don't know. But all the other rules for drones are unchanged. Commanders in battlesuits. There's the Enforcer battlesuit, there's the Cold Star battlesuit. That's it for your commanders in battlesuits. If you bring the Enforcer commander along, then any incoming AP to the Enforcer commander and the unit that he's joined is reduced by 1. And if you bring the Cold Star commander along, then him and his unit get a move characteristic of 12, and the guns in that unit have the assault ability. I think that's what he did before, give them assault. He definitely gave them assault, but whether he got their movement up to 12 or not sure. But that's an auto include if you're bringing battle suits for that movement, for that assault ability, particularly as plasma range has reduced to 18, and plasma infusion is going to be the best gun on suits now. Now you can't get cyclic iron blasters, and you can't, the restrictions now for suits are confusing to me. As for the Kroot stuff, well, you've got Kroot Carnivores, which have sticky objectives, and you have the Kroot Fast Stalkers, and they can get lethal hits and precision hits. And essentially, the 2 different units have the 2 different rules: 1 sticky objectives, 1 with the lethal and precision. And they have slightly different weaponry as well. But Kroot Fast Stalkers come in units of 12 with a couple of hounds running around with them. But essentially, they do the same thing. It's going to be strength for -1 AP attacks, or strength for AP dash attacks in close combat on a toughness 3 6-up save unit, or a toughness 3 5-up invulnerable save unit to shooting attacks if you bring the detachment. So we're talking about weak massed, well, not weak, but squishy massed troop stuff that you can bring. And you can attach the Trail Shaper to them, the War Shaper to them, the Flesh Shaper to them, if you want to give them a couple of different rules as well. But blast templates, or just bolter fire, or volley fire you're gonna be picking up these units fairly quickly. I guess the Kroot army, a good Kroot army, well, not a good Kroot army, but a good opponent for a Kroot army to go up against would be an army full of las cannons and melters and high damage, low shot output guns. Armies without much access to blast, or armies without much access to rapid fire, or armies without much access to just getting in your face and tearing you apart with many attacks. A high damage, low output army is the ideal opponent for the Kroot to go up against, because then they should be able to move, block, and area denial and outscore them. As I said before, you can get some resilience and some close combat output with the Krootox Rampagers. They're going to be interesting. There's the Kroot Lone Spear as well. He's an individual character that is running around, a lone operative with stealth, but 110 points. He's more pricey than a Castellan robot. You're looking at Carnifex points for 110 points. Again, toughness 5 with a 5-up save and 6 wounds. A las cannon is going to pick this guy off quite quickly. It does have a burst javelin though, d6 shots, hitting on 4, strength 10, -2, 2 damage. That could be interesting. There is some teeth in the Tau selection, but again, having not seen them on the battlefield and seeing some geniuses showing me how they play, I have concerns. Do you have any concerns? What do you think? Have you played with them in this edition? Please comment in the comment section below. Let me know your thoughts and feedback and things. Tau, I don't collect Tau, but I've always enjoyed the aesthetic, and I've always enjoyed playing against them because they were such a threat in previous editions. They are the shooty army, and if you weren't able to close them against them, if you weren't able to catch them in melee or pick them apart, they would pick you apart from long range firepower. Many games against Tau I've been tabled because I haven't been able to close the gap and get in there, but there's many games against it. You feel so like you've achieved something if you manage to get to the guns and start stripping them down bit by bit by bit. That sense of threat at range that the Tau possess, that the Tau have always possessed, has made them feel unique as well. So their aesthetic is unique. The feel of this range firepower smashing against you has always felt it's felt very unique, very Tau, and I like it. And in this edition, I'm not sure that they've got that second part anymore. I'm not sure they've got that ranged threat, because they're going to want to get close, because some of the range of the guns has fallen down because of the change to fusion and how that works now, and because of some of the detachment rules in there. I feel like they're more of a move blocky army, more of a Swiss Army knife type army that are trying to drop a unit in here and trade out units here, trade out units there, gum up some of the fields of gum up some of the tables with some of these Kroot units, or by move blocking, or with breacher units, or with just normal guys on foot units. The feel of the army when I've played them in 10th edition has changed from previous editions, and I'm not sure where they sit now. So I'll be very interested to see what the win-loss results are in the future. I'm very interested to read your comments in the comment section below. So thanks for listening. Happy wargaming.